In today's video, we're going to be having a look at Australian consumer sentiment. In addition to that, we're also going to have a quick look at Moderna and what they're doing with the vaccine. And then to top it all off from there, we're looking at WTI oil. Hello and welcome to another ACY Securities Market Update. My name is Alistair Schultz and I'm going to be your host through today's trading journey. Now the first thing I'm looking at today is at the Australian consumer sentiment. We've seen it drop down 6.1% down to 87.9. And the 12-month economic forecast, at least on what people are feeling on the ground, has fallen by a massive 14%. Certainly something to consider in the near-term future and of course over the next 12 months, whilst we've got this ongoing coronavirus situation in Victoria. We're expecting GDP to be hit slightly harder. Now, regardless of what happens on that front, either way, we are looking at a situation we're going to have to keep an eye on, because the Australian economy is so reliant on Victoria's growth. Even though they are only 3% of Australia's landmass, they accumulate 22% of our GDP output. So this lockdown could seriously impair that ability for recovery. Now, moving on to the next piece, we're having a look at WTI oil. We've seen a 0.5% uptick on WTI. It's not really a massive move, but regardless of that, the reason for it is we've seen US inventories fall by about 8.32 million barrels. Now, in addition to that, there's been a few other bits of information that have come across regarding OPEC. OPEC have talked about cutting an additional 842,000 barrels per day. It is still to be confirmed at their meeting later this evening or in the US stages during the day. But either way, it's looking like they're going to be looking at those members who may not have been able to cut exactly as they say, or what they call a cut cheat. And they will be looking to ease these cuts again in August. But regardless of this factor, they're looking for pre-virus levels or forecasts for oil pricing in 2021. However, we still have a massive virus risk. And the demand side of this could mean that if we do get bigger lockdowns or we do have reduced travel, the chances of getting back to pre-coronavirus levels are going to be pretty hard to achieve. So we are going to have to keep an eye on what happens with that in the future. But more importantly, keep an eye on what happens with OPEC this week. Now, moving on from there, we're also looking at Moderna Inc. Now, I have spoken about them in the past before. They are a intermediary that deals with a whole heap of different vaccines. They're a pharmaceutical company, and their stock price has gone up 4.54%. Now, regardless of that, the reason for this is that they've made a vaccine trial that has been so far successful in producing antibodies in their regular patients. However, there is a problem with that. They've had a number of patients who have had severe allergic reactions, or at least a severe reaction to the vaccine itself, without too much saying as to what it has caused it. But this is a part of the trial phases. So it is going to take a lot longer for them to come out with something that's going to be useful to the rest of the world's population. Either way, the news is promising and it has given some good ideas for trades, particularly on Moderna Inc., where we might see some more movement through the stages of trials and error for a vaccine to come out. Moving on from Moderna, we're going to have a quick look at Wells Fargo Bank. They've reported their first loss since 2008. Coincidentally, that coincides with the GFC. Now, what's interesting about this is that they have set aside $9.5 billion to cover the losses that they're expecting. Now, on top of that, that was $4 billion more than what most analysts were expecting to happen. The dividend has been cut from 51 cents down to 10 cents. Shares have dropped by a massive 7.5% almost overnight. And in terms of actual profit, they've had 56% wiped off the board so far this year. And JP Morgan is in a similar result. Now, if we were to compare this situation to the Australian situation, we could also start looking at the businesses such as ANZ, NAB, Westpac, all of the Australian sort of big four. Now, we're likely to see them have losses as well. Naturally, they've also been freezing some loans and payments that are going away. So from that point there, they've got income that isn't coming in. So certainly a reasonable excuse as to why their stock prices are lower than pre-coronavirus. Now, this might lead to an opportunity for us to have a little bit of a look at what might happen with their dividends. We know they've already cut earlier, or in some instances, they've failed to give dividends out. But considering we're coming up to earnings season, it might mean that we see further cuts or even more ill advice coming forward, saying that they will not be providing a dividend for this next payment. Now, having a look at the news ahead. Tonight we have UK CPI, PPI and RPI. We also have a Bank of Japan press conference, Bank of Canada rates plus monetary policy announcements coming out. The beige book for the Fed will be coming out as well, but this is the less moderate, or the one that is not as impactful as the rest of them. So certainly something to look forward to, but not as impactful. So don't expect a huge amount of damage on price from the beige book. But tomorrow and for the rest of this week, there are a few things that I'm going to be watching. OPEC is going to be number one, particularly with looking at how the cuts are going to happen. My personal expectations are that because we already have a bit of an inkling of what is going to happen with OPEC on the cuts, then we're probably going to see it get priced in ahead of schedule, and that there may not be a big amount of movement. Though, be surprised if something does happen, because it could still potentially do something out of the ordinary. From there, have a looking at China GDP. It's going to be their second quarter GDP results, and it's going to be interesting to see how they're responding to the end of their lockdowns and, of course, these small outbreaks that they've had. So I would like to see that very much. The next one from there is obviously what the ECB is doing. They have got a report coming out as well. So keep an eye on those. I will remind you on some of the other videos I do throughout the week as to which one of these is coming up, but they're the big plays for me. Now, if there's anything from today's video you'd like to get in contact with me about, please feel free to shoot me an email at talktoal@acy.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this video so you get more great content from me and ACY Securities in the future. Have a great trading day ahead.